Ah, they've lost. They become tyrants on their thrones, and I won't sacrifice strength or waste my time for them.
You see, in the collection that I have, episodes 5 and 6 were actually combined into a short movie called Age of Heroes. And that's fine, but for some reason the production company that made the American distribution decided to get rid of all of the suave British accents in the first 4 episodes and replace them with pretty dubious American voice actors, which is a really big throw-off if you've just watched the entire series from beginning to end.
Believe me that I am grateful for the kindness you've shown me, but sadly I can no longer serve you, and therefore I must say farewell.
I appreciate your position, but you must allow me my differences. So I'm afraid I can't let you kill me.
If I may be so bold as to ask, why? There was nothing wrong with any of the voices in the first 4 episodes, near as I could tell. They were all voiced very well and very believably. There was nothing terrible about them, and while there was nothing outstanding either, I could at least stand a look at it. But when you change the accents from British to American, and the American voices aren't much better than the British ones, in fact they're much worse, there's a problem there. Of course, I think you'll find the hokey voice acting very easy to forgive once you notice this OAV's greatest flaw. And no, it's not the one-dimensional characters, no, it's not a lack of explanation for how their world works, it's the animation, which quite frankly is downright horrid. In fact, I would go as far as to say it really does remind me a lot of Berserk in how this is executed. They both take place in a fantasy world where magic is present but not really overblown. They both have hideous art designs. Well, not hideous, just hideous animation. The art design on both series is actually very well done. And you better get used to that design because the design is about as good as it gets. I mean, I've seen bad animation before, but here it's almost like they weren't even trying. A majority of the action, especially in conversation, is either a close-up shot of the character's face, or a midriff shot with some movement of the camera, but that's about it. If we're lucky, we may get a twitch of the face, or a slight shift in the eyes, but that's about it. In terms of the action, though, the fights are extraordinarily short, and they aren't much better. Every now and then you do get a decent one-on-one fight, but there really isn't a whole lot to see. It's just repeated animation, choppy frames, and quite frankly, sometimes it's hard to even tell who's who in some of these fights, despite how distinctive the characters are. The editing here is rather dubious as well. I mean, take this end of an episode, for example.
Thank you, Your Majesty. And there is one thing I would like you to do for me. You can abolish slavery throughout your kingdom forever.
Okay, rather abrupt, but I guess it's over. In terms of music, it's not bad, at least not the music itself, but in terms of how they use it, it could use some work. Yes, music plays at a very epic or dramatic moment, which I suppose it should, but for a majority of the series, since it's mostly conversation, we do not get a whole lot of music during these conversations, and that only makes the series seem a little more boring. Like I said, this is a very niche series, and if you're not into the talk of strategy, or politics, or tactics, or things like that, it's going to be even harder for you to pay attention during these moments, and you'll probably only watch this as background noise.
To a Kubatana, men!
Heck, I can't even talk about the opening and ending theme in this one because there really isn't any. Or at least not a consistent one. You see, almost every episode is different in how they open and end it. And that can be a bit confusing. The openings are basically just generic epic music like the kind you'd find in Conan the Barbarian. And the ending credits, well, they do have a song playing. It's not even that bad of a song either. It really does fit the mood of the series very well, but I find it very hard to focus on the song itself when I'm watching the credits, which are, well, just like this. The English credits on one side and the Japanese credits smushed all the way on the other side. It's kind of distracting, personally. And just to give you an idea of how epic this show is, here's an example of the openings that they use for all 5 or 6, depending on the version you have, episodes. Wow, I'm so looking forward to this epic heroic fantasy adventure. The final thing I'd like to note, and I believe it's the most important, is the fact that this OAV was never finished. And I'm not kidding about that. The original writer of the novels, Yoshiki Tanaka, is still writing them today. The series has not yet finished, and to date he's written 13 books. A manga version, which was made by Chisato Nakamura, does come up with its own ending and is 13 volumes long, but neither the novels nor the original manga have been published in English as of today. And the OAV, which was made from 1991 to 1996 and is only 6 episodes long, just stops. I have no idea why, whether it was the fact that the studio went under or they just didn't want to overplay the books or whatnot, but if that was the case, it's 13 volumes long now, and it's taken him until 2009 to get that far. And so, to summarize, well, this is definitely for the completionists only. It has a very interesting plot and some very compelling, if a bit archetypal characters, but its unfinished status and very poor animation are very big drawbacks. This is definitely something that only the hardcore would enjoy. I'd recommend it if you are a fan of Berserk, and don't expect as much violence as you got in that, but still, it's worth checking out. Like I said, if you're not into things like tactics and strategy, you are going to be bored to death, but it's still worth looking at. But for right now, I think it's time we got into something a bit more fantasy.
Isn't that an interesting twist? The descendant has turned the key to his ancestor's lock, and that opens a channel of power to my lord Zahak, the Snake King.
A pity whatever I was talking about will never come to pass in animated form. Ha 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 ha.